I thought Australia, when really they've fallen completely off the cliff after what happened early on the year. They showed so much promise.
South Africa are up there. I'd probably stick England in at second on form right now. And then I think that it's us and France.
I thought Ruben Love, by and large, I thought he looked really good at fullback.
DSPN is brought to you by Novus Glass, proud partner of the Special Olympics New Zealand. The Special Olympics New Zealand National Summer Games is in Christchurch, Otautahi, this December. Across New Zealand, Aotearoa athletes, clubs, volunteers and families are getting ready, training, supporting each other and celebrating as the flame of hope travels down the country. Text Novus to 3598 to support our athletes. That's Novus, Novus, to 3598 to support our incredible athletes at the Special Olympics in Christchurch, Otautahi this December. Notice it, Novus it.
Welcome to the DSPN.
Team New Zealand's in trouble.
Oh, he's done it again, Ricky Herbert.
The Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, thanks for joining us again. So much absolutely brilliant rugby over the weekend. Where to start? Well, obviously we will with our Wales All Blacks test, but this morning, England versus Argentina, you just had an absolute bing-bong nut-bar job between Ireland and South Africa. And as well as that, Australia have set a record they don't want, which is the first time ever they've gone on a European tour and have lost 4 games since, 1958 or something. So we're going to have a couple of different looks at it with our man Tony Johnson from Sky Sport, great old mate and a great friend of the program too as well, you know. We'll look at the All Blacks season. We'll put that out as a separate kind of chat. But Tone, let's just look back at this weekend and the Autumn Internationals. You've been up there for all 3 of the All Blacks matches outside of Ireland, so Scotland, England and Wales. It's been a brilliant month of rugby. Can I just say that to start with? Sitting here in New Zealand and waking up on Sundays and getting up early to watch games, and then it's not just the All Blacks, there are other matches as well to take in. This is brilliant. I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it, and obviously, I'm hoping that you have as well, even though you have a lot of work to do up there.
Yeah, look, Martin, in terms of across the board, the quality of the test matches, that every weekend, you've had 2 or 3 belters. It just tells you how good the level of competition is. And I mean, we all know, we've been saying it, there's one team that's head and shoulders above the rest at the moment, but just the general level of competition. And also I've got to say that the experience of going to the games, I mean, Wales, as we know, had been going through a rough time, but the way they set that test match up at the moment, and I've said it time and time again, what a fantastic asset that stadium is to the city of Cardiff and how it's rejuvenated the whole city. And I don't think I've ever seen it done better than they did at the weekend. The light show that they had beforehand, the way they had the massed choir leading the singing, but no band accompaniment for the Welsh national anthem, the way they dimmed the lights and put the spotlight on the haka, just everything set it up for the test match. And that was just the beginning of what was to follow that game, the next ones, and leading up to the one that you were talking about this morning, which I managed to watch from start to finish. So yeah, it really has been a great weekend of rugby.
Yeah, let's just look at that England game because that's uppermost in the mind. And a couple of things about this. After beating us, the high of that, I was always really interested to see how England would respond. They gave it a great first half. Argentina came roaring back again, probably left themselves a little too much to do. But again, I'm watching this game thinking, what you just said, the gap between the rest of us, put South Africa out of our minds for a second, the gap between the rest of us is actually really close. This Argentina side is right up there alongside us, England, Ireland, France. You've got to put them in that same conversation, I would think.
Well, I think Argentina are building a team that's going to be a real contender, certainly for a top 4 place at the next World Cup. They've got a lot of power, but they've also got some talented backs. I mean, Chocobaris has been one of their stars. He wasn't there today. Matera started on the bench, and yet they came back really well at England. In the end, they had a chance to win the game, Martin. They had that line out, 7 metres from the line. It's funny, I was watching the game with one of my colleagues who's actually he's a former pretty good club player in Auckland, and he's going, tap it, don't go to the line out, too much of a risk. And it proved to be the case because they didn't control the ball and they lost the chance. And maybe if they'd just tapped it and hammered away, they might have been able to produce a winning try against an England team that I think right now could probably claim to be the second best in the world. I mean, there was that 11, 12 wins in a row that have had. Again, it was a hell of a test match, and it just rounded off the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's fair with England, and we can argue about world rankings and points and all of that kind of stuff. But I look at the All Blacks into who we played, who we won, who we lost, how we lost in the context of those losses, and that one it took in a more sting for a while. England really upped their game there, and as I said, it's always difficult to bounce back after the emotional high like that. And they did enough to win today. I'm not taking anything away from them. I think they probably were an inch ahead, but it was bloody close, especially at the end there.
Yeah. And look at all of the matches this weekend. Ireland, who I think a lot of people feel maybe have gone past their peak. They put up a pretty good performance against the Springboks. And certainly, I mean, the contrast in the refereeing between Holly Davidson, who I thought had a terrific game.
Yeah, you're
Cardiff,
right. Yeah.
Because she was calm, she was composed, she was in control, but she didn't overplay her hand, but she was really firm. But then you had Matthew Carley handing out yellow cards like, I don't know, left, right and centre. And the contrast between the referees was quite stark. But and it left the Irish really spitting tacks because they had 4 guys sent to the sin bin, and also they felt that maybe Sasha Feinberg and Gomezello should have been yellow carded for a head contact early in the game, and where was the consistency, etc., etc. But yeah, look, I as I say, I think Springboks at the moment definitely. They are the number one team, but I think Ireland put up a good scrap against them. I thought Australia, when really they've fallen completely off the cliff after what happened early on the year. They showed so much promise, but I thought they fought really well against France as well, and were probably a little bit unlucky with one of the tries they conceded. I thought there might have been an obstruction in one of the line-out drives, so produced a couple of good tries. And so that was a heck of a good contest as well. But the bottom line is, 10 losses that they've had in a year. That's incredible for them. Yeah,
19 all at half time. I mean, they were well in that game, weren't they? Let's just go back to the Ireland game, though. Was that a straight red, do you think, to start with? I know that they fannied around with it and they took a long time to upgrade it, but that was just brainless, wasn't it? The referee's right there. You're off your feet. You're diving in. As a coach, that's an absolute coach killer, isn't it? What a dumbass thing to do. And then it kind of unravelled, didn't it? And there was just, I think, the niggle in the fact that the Ireland scrum was going backwards. And there was just, in the end, I just thought that they kind of lost their heads and lost the plot. And that's why he was handing out yellow cards. Most of those yellow cards, you could probably argue, Tony, yes or no. But once he started giving them, then he couldn't not give the next one. I think it was a bit of a domino.
Yeah, look, I don't think there was an issue with any of the cards that were handed out to the Irish. As I say, the Irish just feel that there should have been one handed out to the Springboks early on. It was one of those ones where the player was dipping. There was definitely head contact. I think some refs would have given it a yellow, but it wasn't to be the case. But I think the most impressive thing about that, and look, it's hard to win consecutive games. These tours now, end-of-year tours, are proving really difficult to go through unbeaten, but they'll do that now, the Springboks, because poor old Wales, I mean, they put up a good feisty fight for quite a while against the All Blacks, but half of that team now won't be able to play against the Springboks because they're not based in Wales. They have I think there's a 25 test rule here, so that if you haven't played 25 tests and you're playing out of Wales, you can't play for the Wales national team. So they're going to lose half their team. They're going to get murdered by the Springboks next week, I fear, which is a bit of a shame. But look, the most impressive thing about that Springbok team to me was they just felt that one way they, setting a foundation was to just scrum Ireland off the park, which is what they did. And that, of course, led to a lot of the pressure that in turn led to the yellow cards.
Old school, wasn't it? And it was deliberate, Tony. I was watching that game thinking, wow, they're just turning the screw here. You don't see that often. I mean, most teams might go, okay, we've done that a couple of times, we'll try. But they just absolutely got it in their heads. No, we're going to punish you this way. And they did.
Yeah,
and
able to win multiple multiple ways, but I think that's one thing. We've talked about the development of their back play, their attacking play, the brilliance that they have dotted right throughout their back line. But I think one of the massive advances that they've made this year is that their scrum has just become an absolute weapon, and has just embellished this perception that we have of them now as of a very complete rugby team. But as I say, Ireland, they fought really hard, but in the end, the pressure just got too much for them. And so you can expect the Springboks to just sweep Wales aside next week. I just can't see Wales compete. They got themselves up pretty well to face the All Blacks, but they won't be within cooey of them next week.
I fear. I mean, we put 96 on Argentina once at Athletic Park, and I remember Sean Fitzpatrick called that early. It was a couple of minutes to go. He didn't want to put a century on. I hope it's not an absolute embarrassment, Tony. But I mean, the South Africans could pick an E team and win that game. It's weird, that rule, isn't it, that the Welsh players aren't going to play. One more thing about the Springboks, though, is that they are the one team in the world at the moment that if you're going to rely on a team to win a game, they're that team, aren't they? And the fact that they seem to be able to bounce back week after week. I know that if they'd played Ireland immediately after the test against France, that would have been another question, as to whether or not that same team could have played, because he did use that team against France and against Ireland, and it would have been interesting to see if they could have gone back to back. But they don't need to, do they? I mean, they've got so many bloody players at the moment that they just don't need to.
Yeah, well, it's just underlines how tough this tour is going to be next year when they play 3-4 tests in succession, plus also the teams that are playing in the URC. So, that's going to really test the All Blacks' depth when they take them on next year. I think that is one thing that the All Blacks can look at this year, is that whilst there have been frustrations with aspects of their play, things that certainly haven't improved or have only made minor improvements, I think one thing that the All Blacks have done this year is increase their depth, and they're going to need every bit of that next year because it's inconceivable that you could put the same 15 players out 3-4 weeks in a row against the Springboks. So it's going to be tested, but that's a great challenge, isn't it? Something to really look forward to.
Look, and we saw it with our team, against Ireland, against Scotland, and then, were they a little wary against England? I'm not making any excuses. On that Welsh game, look, I really enjoyed watching it, Tony. I got to say that. I thought it was a great game of rugby to watch. And I know that you sit there afterwards and look with a critical eye and go, they scored 26 points, they scored 4 tries and things. And I just enjoyed the game. We put 50 points on. It wasn't probably our strongest side. But I think there's enough encouragement there, enough positive things to take out of that for the All Blacks. Anytime you go and beat an international opponent by 50 points, I think you've got to actually put a tick and say, hey, that was a pretty good performance overall. I gave it a B, and I thought it was a nice way to finish the year.
Yeah, I thought it was certainly a satisfactory way to end the year. Obviously, they made a whole bunch of changes, 12, 13 in all. But there were encouraging signs. Firstly, I thought that we've talked so much about the aerial game, and the All Blacks, I think against England, off their own kicks, I think they got about 25% of them back, and whereas England got 40% of their kicks back, and throughout the year that the All Blacks have on defence, so I think have only won about 40% of the kicks that have come their way. So I thought that was probably one of their better performances in the year. There were still a couple of mistakes that were made, but by and large, I like that combination that they had at the back. I know not everyone thinks this way, and they see Will Jordan playing so well at fullback for the Crusaders, but I like him on the wing. I like his skill set that he brings on the wing. I think to have a fullbacks game on the wing against South Africa, a bit like the way the All Blacks did back with the original bomb squad of Richard Kahui and Corey Jane and Israel Dag. I wonder whether that's something that they really need to think about for next year. Will Jordan on the right wing, Caleb Clark with his ability to claim up his head in that style of his on the left. I thought Ruben Love, by and large, I thought he looked really good at fullback. He didn't get everything that came his way, but I thought he got up in the air and he competed really well, and of course he showed his brilliance. He was involved in the creation of a couple of tries and scored one himself, so I really liked that back three combination. Or they might consider Geordie Barrett going back to fullback. Point as well, because I think he's probably the best guy in the air, and they could look at reconfiguring their midfield. So that was a positive that came out of it. The other thing, look, one of the really unsung developments in this All Black team this year, and one of the guys who's been working away behind the scenes and not getting very much publicity or credit, or keeping a low profile, I suppose, is Bryn Evans. He came in and took over the responsibility of coaching the Lineout, and they won all of their lineouts at the weekend, and they took some off the Welsh as well. And you can't ask for anything more than that. Fabian Holland this year.
Yeah, great stat, Tony, that you came out with. We were talking about this yesterday, mate. What a great stat. More lineouts than anyone else in world rugby. Hell yes. Yeah. Loved it.
And he stretched his lead at the weekend because they were just going to him time after time because they knew he was going to win it. But, Scott Barrett got up and made a steal. I think Josh Lord, so great to see him fit and healthy, because it's just showing how good he is. So suddenly, when you consider that Tupou and Paddy Tuipulotu didn't make the tour, you got Scott Barrett, you got those two guys. Suddenly you got a bit of depth at lock. Sam Darry there as well, and that's something it's great to have going forward. But that's a big improvement that they've made throughout the year. In terms of the tries they conceded, Martin, I think again you just had a situation where guys perhaps just don't trust, or not trusting each other to make the tackle. I've got him. You stay out there, and I think we had a situation, one where Rieko Ioane bit in because he wasn't sure whether the tackle was going to be made, and that left the man free on the outside to go in and score the try. That happened against England, and that's just something that they have to build combinations there. And I think of the tests they played this year, I think about 6 of them it was Barrett and Proctor, but the rest of them it's been a real mix, and so it's that those connections on defence, just trusting each other to do the job, that probably cost them a couple of tries at the weekend that they wouldn't have been happy about conceding. But hey, look, it all made for a great game, as I say.
Yeah, great game to watch. Yeah.
Fantastic place to watch a game of rugby, and the whole thing was just it was fun, and as I say, a satisfactory way to end the year.
Great word, because, I was sitting there watching it all yesterday unfold and thinking, I got to keep reminding myself, I love watching international rugby. It's actually really fun. And over the last 4 weeks, we'll wrap this up. There's going to be another episode on the podcast, people, where we sit here and we go through the All Black season and we look with a more critical eye on it. But Tony, as I said, I started this bit by saying I've really enjoyed the rugby over the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's been a real treat. It's been like watching almost a mini World Cup take place, or the sort of the group stages, because you had fascinating matchups every week. And I think when you look back at it now, you can look back in totality at the year and think, okay, South Africa are up there. I'd probably stick England in at second on form right now. And then I think that it's us and France, and, Ireland and Australia and Argentina, and then Scotland, who we always think are going to be there or thereabouts, but haven't quite got there yet. But I think that England have probably got a fair argument to say that right now on form, that they, after these games, would probably be the number 2 team, even if the rankings don't suggest that.
Yeah, no, I'd go along with that, because, as I say, I think is it 12? Is it 11?
11, Tony. Don't give them an extra one, mate.
No, I could have kind of hit the wall, mate. It's I'm just struggling to recall. Yeah, okay, so it's 11. Yeah, definitely number 2. Look, I've got us at number 3. I've got France just behind us. I mean, okay, they sent a B team out to New Zealand. Well, that's their problem.
That's their problem, mate. Man.
Yeah. So I've got France at 4, and then after that, well, I think Argentina potentially are the ones moving up. I think Ireland are thereabouts, even if they're probably a little bit past their peak. They might be able to bounce back from that. But and then, as I say, Australia really falling off the cliff after such a promising start to the year. Although they did, Martin, score 2 great tries at the weekend. Angus Bell, that has to be the try of the year by a prop.
Oh,
that was
that was outstanding. I was thinking that the try of the game was Pierre Barry, though. That chip and chase.
Oh, he's incredible. Yeah.
Wow. That's Jeff Wilson at his absolute best, mate. And Jeff was incredible at that chip and chase. So I was gobsmacked at that skill. Tony, thank you so much for that.
And Max Jorgensen got one as well, too. Yeah.
Yeah. As we wrap up a fantastic autumn international series.
Just before we go, Mark, just to pick up on your point there about how much you enjoyed the weekend, I think people don't ever lose sight of that. I know we put so much stock on winning, but sport's there to be enjoyed as well, and that's one thing you really get when you come to this part of the world is that, the Welsh went along on Saturday. Not one single person in that stadium thought that Wales were going to win that game, and yet they went along to have a really great afternoon, to enjoy themselves, to create a great atmosphere. And I think that goes for a lot of the places over here as well. Let's not lose sight of that. Yep, I know winning's really important, but let's remember to enjoy rugby for what it is, a really great game, a really great spectacle.
Huge thank you to Novus Glass for sponsoring this episode of the DSPN and for being a proud partner of the Special Olympics New Zealand. This December, over 1,200 incredible athletes, along with hundreds of volunteers, coaches and other support staff, will be making their way to Christchurch or Tautahi for the Special Olympics New Zealand 2025 National Summer Games. Novus Glass is proud to be supporting something special, and you can help support the athletes too by texting Novus to 3598. That's Novus, Novus 3598. Thanks again, Novus Glass, for supporting us here on the DSPN. Windscreen, crack or chip, notice it, Novus it.
DSPN.